Kosian and Yeghnukian. We bring you the radio hour like we do every Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. from South ARHNJ, New Jersey. Joining us in the studio are three individuals. This is going to be a very interesting and relatable discussion to all of us. Joining me right now on the microphone is Asatrian. Vartan was on the show last week. He is a lawyer, a political activist, and we heard from a lot of our listeners that they really enjoyed our interview with you, so we thank you very much for being with us, Vartan.
Thank you.
Vartan, we're going to jump right into it. This situation in Armenia is sensitive. People are following it intently, and they're happy, they're up in arms, but what are the challenges that, let's go right to Nikol Pashinyan, what are the challenges that Pashinyan is going to have, and do you think he's going to bring any kind of political stability to a country that desperately needs it?
It's a good question. As far as challenges are concerned, from a political standpoint, the challenges that he has is he got into that position because of the protesters and the populations of the people of Armenia and the support he had from some of the members of the diaspora. And he had credibility. What he said was believable. He was a man of authenticity, honesty, believability. The challenge he has, he's got to be extremely careful. Now that the Republican Party says, okay, we'll go along with you, we'll cooperate, we'll put you as a candidate for the prime minister. The challenge is this: the protesters could feel used. He has to keep his credibility with the people on the street, and he's got to keep his credibility with the people in the parliament. And that's going to be a very difficult thing to do, but he has to do it. He cannot seem that he's sold out the people on the streets and the protesters. He has to follow through with a lot of the promises he made while he was on the street with the megaphone. Now that he's in parliament, he's a legitimate individual, which I believe there's an assumption that he's going to be the prime minister. I believe he's going to be the prime minister. Now he's got to be careful not to sell out some of the promises that he made, because if he does that, he is in peril. And he better be careful, because some of these cooperative parties could be extremely Machiavellian. They can try to co-opt him. They can say, listen, now you're the prime minister. You're one of us. He's got to be extremely careful of that. That's one of the challenges he has. The other challenges is to manage the expectations of the people on the street. He made a lot of promises, you know. Yeah. We had a famous governor in New York called Mario Cuomo. Says we govern, we campaign in poetry and we govern in prose. When he starts to govern, he needs to understand that what he said, people followed him and believed him, and he's got to do a lot of the things that he promised, especially in the area of the oligarchs and the corruption.
You know, I was listening to the show last week when you were on, and that was something that you specifically talked about, the control of the oligarchs and kind of him standing up to them. And is this something that, I mean, it's a trend. It's a trend in Armenia, and oligarchs have control. What do you think the chances are that this guy, he spent 3 years in prison, he's somebody who has made some promises, that he's going to be able to stand up to individuals that have had so much control and have the monetary backing to maintain their control?
I've been watching him, you know. I don't know him or anything. I've been watching him on TV. I've been watching him on YouTube. I've been trying to look at his nonverbal cues. I watch him talk. I'm trying to analyze him. I hope, and I hope to God, because we are a Christian nation, right, that he does not get intimidated by these oligarchs. My position on the oligarchs are very harsh. I believe oligarchs prevent opportunity for the people, those kids, those students. They monopolize industry. They are absolutely the #1 target. If Nikol Pashinyan is my ideal person, the first thing he does is target them. Now, there's two ways he can target the oligarchs. He could follow the Putin model, which is everybody get to the table. We're going to meet you outside of Yerevan, let's talk. Which means, whatever you did until then, you're getting a pass. But from now on, you're paying your taxes, no tax evasion, no putting money outside of, into Cyprus or wherever you're putting your money in. It's got to stop. Or two, if that doesn't stop, we're prosecuting you. I think you should take the second option, meaning we're going to investigate all the money you took from the U.S. Armenian Treasury, whether through using the government or having some type of cronyism with members of government. He's got to investigate that so deeply to make sure that doesn't happen. If he feels that strongly about corruption, he should address it 100%. No amnesty, nothing. Those people should end up in orange jumpsuits, in my opinion.
So we're talking about the government and maybe opposition a little bit. What kind of incentives do you think could there be that now these opposition individuals to have them cooperate as their political actions? They're scrambling to kind of position themselves and see where they sit, because this looks like it may be a reality. We're not sure yet,
right?
But it may be a reality. What kind of position are they placing themselves in, or what kind of incentives could there be?
Yes, you're talking about the opposing party.
Opposition, yeah.
Yeah, they have to, again, the same problem that Pashinyan may have, they have as well. Now, they can't seem like they're selling out too much to Pashinyan, and now they're becoming their gadget people. They have to keep their integrity. They have to appear to compromise, and they have to be flexible. But they can't give away the store. But good governance does require compromise and flexibility. So I don't want to seem like that's a bad thing. They both have to keep a little bit of their integrity and be a little flexible, and that would show stability, and that's good for Armenia as a whole. But the thing with oligarchs, I have zero tolerance toward that. They need to stop because they're blocking opportunity and incentives for young kids to go and become entrepreneurs and innovators and create applications or whatever it is. So that's one thing that I don't think either party should budge on. These people got to places, they have weddings for their kids for $3-4 million while someone is starving and can't feed their kid. That's unacceptable. That is one issue I think they should all coalesce and focus on. That thing I'm uncompromising on as far as I'm concerned.
This week on the 8th, there's the election coming up.
Right.
What do we think about if it turns out to be inconclusive? Do you have any ideas where we're going to be going from there?
I'm going to take the assumption it's going to be conclusive. Okay. If it's not, then we're going to have another show, and we're going to have to discuss it at length.
What do you think the opposition is setting up this Pashinyan to fail?
Clearly they could. I studied politics. I teach politics at colleges. Yeah. They could easily set him up to fail. And one of the ways to do it is to keep, it's almost Shakespearean, one way to do it is to keep talking about how Pashinyan is a great leader and how they think that he's one of the great leaders, and keep talking about he's an honorable man, going back to Mark Anthony. He needs to be careful, Pashinyan. He needs to have that same energy and momentum and power that he had on the streets inside the parliament. He cannot be flattered falsely by these individuals because they'll co-opt him. And if he gets co-opted, trust me, the people will turn on Pashinyan. He better try to stay true as much as he can to the promises he made about anti-corruption, about fair and free elections, and some of the other promises that he made. He's got to try to do his best to follow through on that.
We've been talking about, on this show specifically, we've been talking about oligarchs for a long time. I mean,
yeah.
They've been around for a while, obviously.
Yeah.
And I want to say that this movement off the streets is a step in the right direction.
Right.
But realistically, I want to get your opinion. Do you think there's any chance that we're going to actually unseat these individuals? I mean, calling them out in public is one thing, but they have supposedly so much money that I don't know if that's a difference. It's going to make a difference.
For Armenia, they have a lot of money in Armenian standards. In New York City standards, their money is not that much. So what they need to do is, 1, bring them up on charges of tax evasion. 2, we do not allow Pablo Escobars in Armenia. Okay, we don't want to be Pablo Escobars. They're not Al Capone.
That's a good comparison.
And they better stop. The reality is, you need to enforce them. All you need to do is make one example of one person and say, wait a minute, how did you gain this wealth? Let's audit you. Let's get forensic accountants. One person, trust me, the rest will fall in line. Find the biggest oligarch and investigate him. And if you need help from other countries, we have great accountants. You need more accountants on this matter to find out where the money is, how did you get the money, and how come you didn't pay taxes? And tax evasion would be one way of looking at it. It's got to stop.
Before we went on the air, Vartan was just talking about some political prisoners and the numbers. Do you see potentially releasing political prisoners as a way to foster reconciliation? I mean, you said there were 60 political prisoners about.
Well, my position is very clear about that. It's a must.
Yeah.
It's not a should. It's not a maybe.
Yeah.
It's a must. He should absolutely make that as his #1 priority.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to Koko, who's sitting next to you.
Thank you for the question.
Koko Yeghnukian is with us. He is the brother of Garo Yeghnukian, who is in prison in Armenia, and he is what Koko would say, and many say, is a political prisoner, and the government of Armenia says otherwise. Koko, your brother's in prison. What is your response to some of the things that Vartan was just talking about?
I agree fully. As far as just one thing I would add, as far as the oligarchs, it's not only the tax evasion. It's not like they were doing a legitimate business and they didn't pay taxes. The businesses themselves are thievery. So they're stealing the money to begin with. Not to mention, many of the oligarchs, some of the bigger names, have actual criminal cases against them, murder, beating, so on and so forth. So yeah, they should, I agree with him, there should be no tolerance, they should be prosecuted, and that will be one of the telling things. When and if Pashinyan comes into power, there's two things that need to happen. The innocent political prisoners, including Garo Yeghnukian, should be released. The minimum count is 60, some have a count of over 100. And the second thing is they should be replaced by the guilty members in our society in prison. If those two things don't happen immediately, then we have problems. And as Vartan mentioned, the people in the streets, they do have their finger on the pulse, so they will detect it right away. And just like they were deifying Pashinyan, they could easily turn on him.
Tell us about Garo, your brother. How is he? Do you speak? Are you able to speak to him? What is the situation there? What is a prison like in Armenia? I don't know what a prison is like in Armenia.
Well, ironically, Garo is in the old KGB prison on Nalbandian Street in the center of the city. He was arrested in the early morning hours of July 20th, 2016. So he's been there almost 2 years now. Yeah. I do get one phone call a week for about 5 minutes. So we speak very briefly. How are you? How are you? So forth. It's it's prison. It's prison in an old Soviet KGB. So it can't be good. He is alone in his cell, and in his case, his arrest. He's not only is he a political prisoner. He's actually a prisoner of conscience under the criteria of Amnesty International, because he had absolutely nothing that he did was violent in nature. The accusations against him, the evidence against him, are a handful of phone calls, some of whom with his wife during the days of the police station takeover. He, like tens of thousands of Armenians, were concerned what's going on. They were speaking on the phone. A lot of them lending support to the Sasnatzer, quite often morally, and they just wanted him out of the way. Ironically, in 2012, Garo had started an organization called Rights and Support, which was to aid the families of political prisoners when the main breadwinner was in prison, as well as to help the political prisoner himself get legal aid, which is a huge issue in Armenia. And that was one of the things that rubbed the government the wrong way. He also allowed many activist groups to make use of his building on Sayat Nova Street. And until then, a lot of these activists would be meeting in parks or somebody's apartment. By giving them use of the space, they had, had 4 walls and a roof. They had internet access and so forth, and that also upset the government. So those are the reasons that Garo is actually in prison, because he made activism easier.
I'm laughing because you're making activism easier. Here you get lauded and praised, and you become a social media figure to make activism easier. And someplace like Armenia, which we hope would be a progressive nation, they're imprisoning somebody for making activism easier. Was he given a term a sentence? How long? And is there any hope that, or an end date for his release?
Well, he was held in pretrial detention, which is one of the biggest abuses of power in Armenia and in any totalitarian regime. So he was held for close to a year. The trial, in quotes, started in June of 17. Nothing has happened. So it's almost a year that the trial started. Absolutely nothing has happened. When I say nothing, I mean no evidence has been presented, no witnesses, nothing. The last 6 weeks, there hasn't even been a trial. Partly because of what's going on in Armenia, and partly because they're at a dead end. They don't know what to do. So yeah, he's actually an innocent man in prison. And Armenia, by the way, just like the U.S., does have the presumption of innocence. As far as an end date, we're like the rest of us. We're hoping that when there is the power change, that Pashinyan will make it the first order of business. Because any nation that has political prisoners cannot take even a single step forward towards any kind of real democracy. That's one thing you have to alleviate. So going back to what I said, you need to release the political prisoners and put the real criminals in prison.
Koko, we thank you for being here. I mean,
thank you.
I can't even imagine having a sibling of mine in prison, and you're talking about it like it's nothing. I mean, I know you've probably been talking about this often, so you're used to it, but we thank you very much.
You get thicker skin after a while.
We thank you for sharing that with us. Also joining us in the studio is Sasun Kosian Sasun, and I'm really interested about this. By this, you're the New York chapter of the Armenian Renaissance, and this is a diaspora organization that helps Armenians in Armenia become more democratic. I'm fascinated by this, how we're doing work from here in New York to help them become more democratic. Tell me a little bit about yourself first and then the organization.
Thank you. I'm Sasun Kosian, and as you mentioned, I'm part of the Armenian Renaissance, the New York chapter. We are a diaspora-based organization that is supporting democracy and rule of law in Armenia. Why do we exist? We exist because we felt, and we have been in existence for about 5 years, we felt there's a big gap in the diaspora organizations. We felt that the large and long-time organizations such as the political parties, ARF, ANC, the church, and the Ramgavars, and everyone, AGBU, they all have been maintaining a position that we diasporans should not interfere in any way in the internal processes of Armenia. And we felt that this is wrong. Why is it wrong? This is an excellent example of what's happening today. You see everyone smiling in Armenia, even former officials, even political opponents of democratic movements. Everyone is happy, everyone is jubilant because they all wanted this change. Mm-hmm. And the position of the traditional diaspora organizations was, it's not our business. We can support Armenian governments, whoever it is, in questions like the recognition of the Armenian genocide, some international support such as what ANC has been doing, which is great work. I have been a long-time supporter of ANC for what they are doing, but I have always opposed, as well as our organization, Armenian Diaspora, of what they are not doing, what they should have been doing. So now everyone saw, including ARF, who discontinued their partnership with the Republican Party. ANC issued a statement. I'm not sure where all other organizations are, but I think it's plainly obvious that the right place to be is with the people. Why wasn't this obvious before? I don't understand, and this is the reason why our organization, Armenian Renaissance, existed, and we tried to rally through grassroots methods Armenian diaspora people to support any and all democratic forces in Armenia. We supported the Sasna Zarer, we supported the founding parliament, and we recently supported Nicole before he actually succeeded. So, and that support was through statements, through email communications, and through even financial support by whatever means we could. And we always faced this resistance from traditional organizations. Now, everything, we would like to put everything behind, and this should be a good lesson for everyone, that no matter what your history, no matter what you have contributed, you should always be with people. So now everyone seems to be with the people, and I wish that everyone continues to be with the people, because we hope that Nikol Pashinyan's government will succeed, but we don't know what will happen in the future. So we should always be that force from the diaspora who, if necessary, pressures any government, even if it's Nikol's government. We hope that's not the case, but if we see that they are steering away from the democratic path, then we should speak up.
Sassoon, just I want to know how many Orange chapters are there in America? There's a lot. This is the first I'm hearing about this. So.
Yeah, so that's why. Yeah, because there is. So we have 3 chapters in America: L.A., New York, and Boston.
Okay.
We have a Toronto chapter in Canada. We have some European chapters: France, Germany. We have Lebanon. We have even Russia. The reason you haven't heard is because the mainstream organizations would not like people, the diasporans, to know about us, and also because we don't have that big of a support from people for the same reason that we should not interfere in Armenian affairs.
I mean, that's amazing. These are the big hubs in America and Canada, and it's super important. I mean, New York, LA, Boston, 3 of the biggest hubs of Armenians in America. So we appreciate all the work that you're doing, Sassoon, for an extremely important cause. We thank you very much for being here. Vartan, I'm going to go to you just to wrap up. We have a few minutes left on this. Some of your thoughts based on what Sassoon and Koko said, and then just to close up.
Well, I heard what they both had to say, and I think what you had to say was very genuine and authentic as well. No one could imagine what it's like to have a sibling as a political prisoner in a foreign country. So my thoughts and prayers will go out with him, and I'm optimistic that he will be released, and he should be released. It's a requirement. It's absolutely mandatory that they do that. I am also optimistic about having multiple voices. You know, there is no monopoly on the truth. No one has a monopoly on the truth. So I like to see more and more organizations get involved with different points of view, and they should have equal respect, and no one should block anyone from having their unique point of view, because there's a mosaic of ideas, and they all should be respected equally. As far as wrapping up on all the other points, going back to the oligarch issue, I'm very dead set on that, because not because it's a class envy situation, it's because I'm thinking about the college kids. Their opportunities are being blocked because there's a monopoly on industry, and you should have an equal playing field. And when you have oligarchs and monopolies, the young people don't get opportunities, and the culture shifts where some people actually worship the oligarchs. I want the young people to worship the astronauts, the physicists, the professionals, the entrepreneurs, all those other people that generally do grow and develop a country. They add to a country, not detract from it. So ultimately, that's my point of view, and I wish Nikol Pashinyan good luck. I hope he needs to get his guard up. Don't be so naive thinking that this is all over, everything is fine. He needs to be very vigilant. He needs to also be connected to the people who got him there, and don't forget those people and the promises he made. Otherwise, it would be a catastrophe.
You know, I'm going to just go to Koko and Sassoon one more time just to wrap up while we're getting the mics set up to them. Vartan, you said something, and you said it twice, 2-3 times, that the young people need to be able to look up to the right people. And we here in America, we hear about co-op and these Armenian organizations that are doing such great work on the ground level,
Right.
building up centers for young kids to really learn what they need to learn, and for them to come out of those centers with all these skills and not be able to look up to the right people and advance is just, it's heartbreaking. And it almost makes our efforts here fruitless. Pointless.
We can reverse engineer that. It just could take time.
I'm hoping to. Coco, just a closing statement if you want.
That's all that we can hope for the political prisoners to be released. Garo, by the way, is an attorney. He graduated from St. John's Law School, and he's been a human rights activist for some time. So he has been studying the cases thoroughly. He's printed many articles about political prisoner issues, and it's been used as a basis of what a political prisoner is. Because a lot of there's a misconception that many people think that it's a legal acknowledgement. It's not. It's a political. I've been asked many times, well, Armenia doesn't admit it has political prisoners. No country admits it has political prisoners. Turkey, which is abundant with political prisoners, does not admit they have political prisoners. The rest of the world knows. Armenia, being so small, unfortunately falls under the radar. We're not Turkey, we're not North Korea, we're not Iran.
Right. Sasun, I'm
Thank
going
you.
to ask you for any closing statements.
I'd like to call upon everyone to use this truly historic moment to restart, really restart in the way that we think, in the way we do or do not do things that help Armenia. This is a new beginning, and from this point on, I'm going to be very optimistic and say that this is going to be the beginning of a national awakening, and that should be expressed in the economy. We should have a reversal of migration, really a economic boost, and the plans of the former government to have 4 million Armenians by 2040, that's not enough. That's not ambitious enough. We should reach that much sooner, probably by 2025 or something like that. Not through natural growth, but by inwards migration, reversal of the migration. So let's use this moment and let's have this wider objective. And this is about myself, about everyone. We should plan our future in Armenia.
I just have one follow-up, if you allow me to. And I say it a lot, and I'm going to say it again. I always say it wholeheartely. This conversation that we're having here is so important, so vital to our community up here in New York, New Jersey, and the whole total Armenian community. We wouldn't not allowed to have these communications, and then people have different ideas, good ideas. It's all great because it has to do with openness and in the Armenian community. We could not have had that if we don't have this megaphone. So I want to thank everyone from the Armenian Radio Hour and all of our guests here to allow us to do this, because right now it's stimulating thoughts, some good ideas, some bad ideas, but whatever, it doesn't matter because it's all openness, and it shows how great that this radio station can be and this radio hour can be. Thanks, Vartan, and everybody else. You guys are amazing. You put so much effort into it, and I want to thank you for allowing us to speak. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for those
Thank
kind words, Vartan, Asatrian, Coco, Yeghnukian, and Sasun Kosian. We thank you very much for being here. These are very, 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 I'm going to say it 3 times, very, very, very important issues that we can relate to, and we absolutely need to take action on and be aware of. So we thank you very much.